真正嘅嚟俾記者睇，佢真正。係記者喺度。我真正過嚟嘅唔該，我要佢身份證明啊！走嚟過嚟啊！喺度，收收唔該。冇打，講多次冇打，冇打。帶佢隔離，係。我會立住。唔好打，冷靜啲。我哋呢個 打我先喎，全部都打佢，佢有打我哋啲兄弟啊，佢有打啲兄弟啊，全部都打佢，收到超。你唔係你合理啲，你叫佢認錯，你要做任何啲嘢，但係你唔好行先，道歉，可以行，你叫佢道歉，你叫佢跪低，你叫佢平反六四，但係你唔可以咁樣去做㗎，你行私刑係關咗邊事啊？道歉，你叫佢道歉，好唔好？掛起佢啊！掛起佢啊！佢都冇用執董事冇功啊！好啦。佢打緊你兄弟啊！好唔好啊？唔該你。你哋企喺上面梗係講得輕鬆啦。我哋再砌嗰啲啊！你打死佢係點啊？你咪講緊法事啦！唔好咁樣啦，好唔好啊？以後玩啦！而家仲要同佢講嗰啲嘢啊？嚇！你諗住佢點啊？手法，你自己有手法。唔係你諗住將佢點先？我問你係咪做先啊？係可以咁樣，係咪可以？我幫你幫。好啦，我哋啲人啊，咁樣大家警察打人，你揾藉口警察打人。邊個還隻眼俾我哋？邊個還隻眼俾我哋啊？咩話？邊個還隻眼俾我哋啊？邊個還後尾啊？我都俾人打咗啊！你還俾我啊？你打死佢！你揾佢啊！我都做咗啦，你唔好點跳！我點跳啊？你揾你講咩？
你見唔見到阿賴我翻隊入嚟啊？你落我哋行車咯。見唔見到啊？又一隊翻嚟啦，因為呢條友啊就係走啦。定係依家走定係想攞就攞得差唔多打啦，因為有一時花燈。我相信你好想同你一齊除咗件房間衣出嚟。其實係㗎，但係我話俾你聽，我啱啱咧，你哋喺呢度。
佢出，我哋執佢出，你收容佢都唔好打，唔好打，你同佢扶佢起身啊，唔好打，執佢出，夠啦，死人啦，兄弟，夠啦，喂，夠啦，唔好打啦，夠啦，唔好再打，死人啦，唔好再打。你打我哋香港人嘅時候有冇講啲乜嘢？唔打可以啊，怪嘅啊！你打我哋香港人嘅時候有冇做過啲乜嘢？怪嘅啊！冇啦，啱啊！起身啦！好啦，夠啦，夠打死人啦！打死人都夠啦！好啦，夠啦！打死人夠啦！而家快死救人啊！快佢啊！隻手瘀晒啦！手瘀晒，唔使遮咯喂！我遮
world, and it looks terrible to many of the people of Hong Kong who might genuinely support the protest movement, but just abhor violence and absolutely hate this type of thing. It's bad enough where the demonstrators were having running battles, but if something happens to this gentleman and he dies, then I think there would be a massive backlash from the general community saying that things are just totally out of control, and you can't possibly take it. You've lost all moral high ground when you do this type of thing. Whether the police will come in and clear this, well, whether they can, we just don't know. Right now, the critical thing is to try and get to him. The police have no one to deal with, Mark. That's the problem. There's nobody they can actually negotiate with and say, listen, you carry on, we want him out, because they can't get to them. There's no one actually to talk to. Everything's done on social media. Everything's done in small groups downstairs, and everyone just moves together. So trying to get a message to them saying we desperately need this guy out as quickly as possible and you can stay is the message they probably want to send, but I don't know how they're going to do it. And so we're going to be stuck here for a while. Maybe paramedic groups, there's an ambulance that's arrived, it's just up the road, I could just see at the top of the ramp. Maybe they're here and they can say, listen, this guy is going to die, you've got to let us take him away. But very volatile, very volatile. Only thing in the favour of the police is the numbers have dramatically dropped in the last hour or so. So a lot of the youngsters here who saw some of the fighting just thought enough is enough and have got the train away from here. But much less people, perhaps then the police can mount some type of operation to get this person out.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that as I say, paramedics are with that individual who had been certainly beaten and stamped upon by some of the protesters. Others have protected him and have formed a sort of protective shield around him where the paramedic is working. But the paramedic is asking for more room to work and no doubt for more paramedics to get in. But the key will be to get this guy out of the airport and to hospital. I think we're joined on the phone as well now by the former Democrat Party member of the Hong Kong Legislative Council, a well-known pro-democracy activist in the colony, Emily Lau. And Emily Lau, I mean, I don't know whether you're witnessing the pictures of this alleged or supposed undercover police officer being ill-treated by some of these protesters, but they're pretty awful scenes.
Yes, indeed, and I don't think Hong Kong people would like to see that. I mean, we support peaceful demonstrations, and in the past few days, the demonstrations at the airport were by and large peaceful, but now I think things are turning ugly, and that is most undesirable. And of course, and that would also lose the support of the public and the international community.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, I guess, who among the protesters is winning the argument? The more extreme elements of the protesters or the core majority? And it seems at the moment the more extreme elements. Are you concerned about that in the way that it may provoke a firmer crackdown by the authorities and even perhaps from Beijing?
Well, I think they should know, and as you rightly said, they emphasize there's no leader and no platform, and they just decide. But I certainly hope they will be sensible, and whatever they try to do is to maintain the support and the sympathy of the public and the international community. And I don't think any behavior that people find unacceptable I mean, I don't think we should have that sort of thing, especially on display at the airport. I think this is very, very undesirable and unacceptable.
Yeah, I just want to point out, I'm still looking at pictures, Emily, of Emily Lau, of the individual who seems now to be in the recovery position, and paramedics are with him, so hopefully he will not be too badly injured. But do the protesters give up what moral high ground they may have had with behaviour like this?
Well, I think they must be discussing amongst themselves now, and they should know what tactic to employ. But I think this type of thing cannot and should not go on. And I'm sure the business community in Hong Kong must be very, very concerned. And these are the people who should come out and should speak out. We need a political solution and not to pitch people against the police and all that. I mean, this type of, it's really, really quite bad. It's bad for Hong Kong's image. And so I certainly hope the people who can talk to the government, who talk to Beijing, must come out and try to find a political solution.
So what is that solution? And surely a political solution requires the protesters to give some ground, as well as the Hong Kong authorities or the Beijing authorities.
Well, indeed. I mean, politics is the art of the possible. So I think both sides have to give some ground. And now I think what people really want is for them to set up an independent commission of inquiry to look into these 10 weeks of all the demonstrations and the chaos. And that's not a very unreasonable demand. And that's not just the protesters, but many, many Hong Kong people also support that, including people from the pro-establishment camp. So I certainly hope people who can talk to them, talk to Beijing and to Carrie Lam, will come out and urge them to really make some concession and try to calm the situation.
Yeah, and the agreement, Emily Lau, with China, between Britain and China in 1997, does allow the Hong Kong government to call in the Chinese military, to invite the Chinese military or military police in to help with law and order. Do you fear that we're getting to a position where that could happen?
Well, of course it's possible, but we certainly do not want to see that. I think the business community and the international community, they don't want to see that, because that would be really bad for Hong Kong and bad for China. And that would be the end of one country, two systems. And so I certainly hope Prime Minister Boris Johnson, although he's very busy with Brexit, but I certainly hope he and Parliament will speak out for Hong Kong. We are going through very difficult, very trying times. And there are many British citizens living here, many British companies here. And I also hope the international community would also urge Beijing and Carrie Lam to come to their senses.
Okay, Emily, I just want to point out to the viewers that what we're witnessing are the beginnings, we understand, of an attempt to get this individual who the protesters are claiming is an undercover police officer, an attempt to get him out of the airport now. And you can see there some paramedics trying to push their way through the crowd. Let's just, if you bear with us, Emily Lau, let's just go back to Stuart Ramsey, our correspondent on the scene. And Stuart, it does seem as though they are trying to get this individual out.
Yeah, that's right. We moved up to him. The thing is, though, Mark, what we've seen of this chaos is, initially at least, it looked like he was coming out. But it's possible that the plan that was talked about a few minutes earlier was about him being taken to what they described as a safe area. Now, the direction they now appear to go goes to some offices and a prayer room inside the airport complex. It's up and to the left from here, but it's still a bit of a way. I would imagine that if they were to do something like that, that's where they would take him. But it appears to have come to a grinding halt once again. The paramedics had their gurney in there, but it hasn't been in use, and now it's stopped again. And I can just about make out that there's a discussion taking place, and I think they're trying to move it. Yeah, but it's sort of so they're not taking it out. Well, at least the direction it's going. Really? Right. So this actually might. Right, I see. I think the paramedics are trying to take him, and I think everyone else is fairly determined not to let him go. So this is turning into a very, very nasty sort of tug of war over the well-being of this man. regardless of what he is or isn't as a policeman, this is pretty bad stuff. Okay, it looks like the paramedics have had their way, and they're being chased down now. They try to get him away. I think we'll just go. Sorry, I just need to catch up, Mark, with this. It's a bit difficult. There's lots of people everywhere. Okay, so you can see 2 ambulances in the distance. Some of these people aren't happy that this prize of theirs, I suppose you might describe it, we're running out, Mark. This prize of theirs has been taken away. They could do with some support here to get him out. They're just doing their job as paramedics. They're trying to whisk him away as quick as they can and get him inside the ambulance that's at the top of this ramp. There's a lot of press following him. I have to say, there are demonstrators, but not that many. I think they're going to be successful now. Just need to get him into that ambulance and whisk him away as soon as they can. Right,
we're seeing
outside.
pictures now, Stuart. We're just seeing pictures of the ambulance crews pushing the trolley towards an ambulance, and it does appear that that individual is going to be in that ambulance shortly and on his way to hospital. But it begs the question of where the police are to help them do this.
Yeah, they're not here at all. Now, I think you probably should be able to see our pictures as well. This is the, I think Michael actually has the shot of the injured man from the inside. They're going to lock up and they're going to move off. No, it's very odd, Mark, isn't it? You'd think the police would have wanted to come and assist. However, they may have made or reached the conclusion that their presence was only going to make the matters worse, and that the medics who help everyone who gets injured in all of these demonstrations would be given the opportunity to get him out. Obviously, there was a tug of war to try and stop that happening successfully, but it has happened. So presumably, that was the police calculation. Let's keep away from this for the time being. Let's get this guy out, let's get him safe, and let's have a rethink about what we're going to do with the demonstrators who are still here. Numbers, I'm going to get a better idea of the numbers once the ambulance has gone, and that's it. So that particular thing is over, Mark. That incident, that was turning very nasty indeed. It looks terrible, of course, but at least he's out, and hopefully we'll be okay then, looking after him in hospital. So we're going to go back inside and try and get an idea of the numbers that are in here now that we've had so much violence and so much running about and so many arrests. Difficult to know how many people were caught up. I'll show you a picture over the side just to get some perspective. Usually the ground floor concourse is full of people. It isn't. You can see now that's pretty much looking like a late evening arrivals hall. So what you've got here then is the departure floor and the protesters that are left on it, and we assume some will be preparing to leave now, some will be considering staying. A few hundred did last night. Now that allowed the airport to open for flights between 5 and 6, and it wasn't till, much later, I suppose 1, 2, 3 in the afternoon, that these people moved up to the departure security gates of the departure, sat down, staged protests, and basically brought any chance of anyone actually getting there, getting onto a plane to a standstill. Check-in then was abandoned and the airport was effectively closed. Arrivals continue to happen and have been continuing right up to this evening, to the last hour or so. Right, just to say on the numbers front. So we look this side, I mean, it's got to be 150 maybe, I suppose, milling around. There's probably quite a lot of press in there. And then if we come back this way, Row G is where most people have gathered, because that's where the alleged Chinese policeman was being held. Very few people in this section, so the next section is there. So we're down to a few hundreds now. If the police were thinking of coming in, I'd suggest that probably it's best to do it when there's hardly anyone here. We're told that from tomorrow that they're going to try and have a way of stopping people entering the airport if they haven't got a ticket. Now, that exists in many countries, particularly in India, I think in Turkey as well. You can't go in if you don't have a ticket. That doesn't happen here. And the underground or the rail system, effectively, you are in the building on arrival. So it's going to be quite a complicated way of limiting people who have access through the metro and the rail. Obviously, road checks can happen, though to a degree they were beginning already. So you can put those in place. That all takes a bit of time. But we're told that is what is being planned from tomorrow, in an effort to stop the airport being closed for the third time in 3 days.
Well, Stuart, let me just interrupt you there, Stuart. So let me just interrupt you just to bring viewers up to date, and we're seeing the aftermath, really, where Stuart is right now, of a very nasty situation where what the protesters say was an undercover police officer was discovered among the protesters, and they tied him up, they started to beat him, they started to stamp on him, and it was only after some considerable time that paramedics were able to get to him, and the protesters, some of the protesters still trying to beat him, others trying to protect him, that those paramedics were then able to offer some help. And the protesters are claiming that they got hold of this individual's bag, and in that bag were a number of belongings, including a T-shirt that they displayed, which said, "I love Hong Kong Police." Apparently, they also then displayed his ID cards and his passport, and clearly the thought being that he was in some way involved with the police. The police had, these are now live pictures of the aftermath of that incident. That individual, I should say, has now been taken away to hospital, one assumes, in an ambulance by paramedics, as was an earlier man who was also, the police came in heavy-handed and got him out. So that's the situation at Hong Kong Airport. Much calmer now. Stuart Ramsey's still there. And Stuart, I think my question is there any sign of any leadership of this protest, or is it just utter chaos?
Yeah, no, there is. Okay, on the face of it, there's no leadership. This is a community-based decision-making process that comes through everyone speaking on social media, and that their orders and their plans about what they're doing and where they're going is sort of evolves, and that they have little meetings and they talk about things and so on and so on. Most of us don't really believe that. I think that there is a group above that social media who are working together to drive it in the directions they see fit. It doesn't necessarily they're sort of Mr. Evil or anything like that. It's just I think it is a bit more organised. Just to explain where I'm walking to, this is where this is the final areas of the airport where you would be allowed, where you'd pass through security and go through passport control. Now, the reason we've come here is we're told that these sorts of people that you can see, civilians who've been caught up in this, are going to be allowed very slowly but surely to cross the sort of line and go through into the departure section, where they can go to lounges, where they can sleep and whether they can get something to eat properly, because the airport is pretty much a 24-hour airport. If you have a look down the sort of little pockets of people who've been caught here, and for them, what's gone on here over the last hour or so must have been absolutely terrifying, because it's been pretty noisy and pretty scary. We'll come along here as well, Michael. We'll actually try and head up, sorry, Mark, we'll just try to head up to the south to see if we can get people coming out as quickly as possible. But yeah, you see, all of the protest movement has basically disappeared now. This is